Hi, Jesper.
Hey, Martin. And for the people listening, welcome. This is the first ever episode of the Better Dad podcast. And my name is Jesper Conrad. And the wonderful man you also can hear and see if you're on YouTube is Martin Cooke. And together we have founded the Better Dad Institute. We have been talking back and forth over a long time. Should we create a podcast? Shouldn't we? And if, what should it be about? And in reality, what it should be about is us as dads exploring some of the subjects that can sometimes be difficult to talk about with other dads. Because for some reason, us men do not have a very long tradition for sharing personal feelings and stories. And yeah, we kind of keep it a little um, on the surface. I personally think too much, and I believe that we, by sharing our stories, our thoughts, can see ourselves grow. That is what we do in the Better Dad circles we have, but also here in the podcast, just together explore subjects.
Yeah,
So that's what we are going to do today, Martin.
sounds good, Jesper. I'm definitely, I would say a relatively unusual dad. I do like to talk and have perhaps, I was going to say always liked to talk, but it only came about after I was about 20 something. But I'm
Yeah,
definitely a talker, sometimes guilty of talking too much. So let's keep this podcast tight,
yeah.
get into the
Get
meat, the
into some
juice.
subject. Yes,
Yeah.
and we talked a little about the subject for today could be conflicts. Um, and I have four kids, one wife. Wonderful to be
Same
together
here.
still. Yeah.
Same here. Yeah.
And
Four and one.
I have my fair share of conflicts during life, both with the kids and with my wife. And
Yourself too, I hope.
yeah, yeah. And always when I have left one of the conflicts, I just have felt shitty. The anger part of me, if the you can call it the fire of anger gets to be ignited, it can be really difficult, or could earlier, for me to not want to win the verbal fight, to be the one who was right, and everybody else was stupid, and I only I saw the clarity, and all other people were stupid. Um,
So let me get this clear. You like to be right in conflict.
I was
Is that
right,
where you come
Martin.
from?
I
Oh,
was right. That was the what that was the feeling that
yeah.
I have had in the moments. And I can see that when I look back, sometimes it has taken me some long time afterwards, not days or anything, but it could, if we were discussing something, it could take me some hours to just walk around and just make up stories in my own mind about how wrong they are, am I right, and they are stupid. And I don't know how it works for you when you have had a
Mm.
conflict with your wife or kids, but I ended up on the I will call it the righteous prick mode,
Okay.
and yeah,
That's
that's
fun. That's funny because I was discussing this with my wife prior to jumping onto this with you, and I was talking about when you are right in a in conflict, and and I said I used the words when you are right speaking to my wife. I didn't say when you feel like you're right because it's not a feeling. It's just you come at it from a very clear position. And she was saying, "Well, I am often right." And it's similarly, perhaps to you, she can have strong convictions. I think my convictions can perhaps be a little more easily swayed, or so. I think in conflict, it's probably quite important to understand kind of what character you are and also your partner. How often are they right, or how stubborn are they, or yeah, how do they like to calm down? Like, does it take hours, days, or
yeah.
what? How long does it take for you to perhaps see the other perspective or dial it back a little.
Yeah, then I'm like in doubt, should we even do this podcast? Because I put myself in a bad light when I look at how shitty I am at
Oh, but
conflicts
look,
and
that is the
parenting.
very point. That is the very point, Jasper, of us
Yeah,
starting the Better Dad Institute, isn't it? And you've alluded to this, but the whole point of it, or a large point of it, isn't just to help others. There's something positively selfish. We want to improve who we are, right?
absolutely. And when I look at my wife have found a wonderful technique, even though if we had argued about something and it was me who were in the wrong, I have a point to this right and wrong in a second. But when you end up arguing, someone wants to either be right or wrong, and you want to find someone who is right or wrong. And even though I can have been the one who were wrong, my wife have figured out the best way to inflate my anger is to give me a little time and then come afterwards and say she's sorry. Even though she haven't actually done anything wrong. Or well, in an argument, of course, both parts are to blame because you can end up being really mean to the ones you love with your words because you know each other so good that when you argue, you often sometimes both parts end up saying some stupid shit.
Yeah.
But her taking the first step, and that's why I said I'm not proud. I would love to be better at being the one taking the first step, but her taking the first step of saying, "Hey, man, I'm sorry this happened," and that we argued, and that just like, yeah,
Takes the heat
deflates.
out a bit, doesn't
It
it? Yeah.
takes it
Yeah.
deflates the balloon of anger inside of me
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
really healthy way.
And I mean, that's the technique. I mean, just for context, your wife's a psychologist, so she would be well
She
versed
knows.
in this kind of thing. That must
Yeah.
be really annoying though, right?
Yeah.
Useful too, but
But yeah. But what I see, and one of the things that could be interesting to explore is in this talk is both how could we become better at catching ourselves and stopping ourselves when we start to argue with either our loved one or our children, which also are loved, of course. Um, how can we be better to stop ourselves when we have surpassed the point of reason? I believe there is this in arguments. Sometimes you get like all emotional and just arguing, and when you look at it, sometimes you can't even remember where it started, and you're just stupid,
yeah,
so it could be interesting to talk about how could we become better at stopping, but also interesting to talk about how can we deflate it from the start, because seeing something as an argument where I used the words earlier, winner or loser of an argument, then you're already wrong.
yeah, yeah. So there's something there about I was thinking when it's like, do you have consciousness when you're not feeling angry or in a point of conflict that you can lose it, basically? Are you aware that you can lose it in an argument? And if you are aware of that, that's really helpful. That feels like the first step, right? It's kind of like, if you were to try and improve yourself, it'd be like, yeah, hands up. When I am in an argument with somebody or my partner or my children, I can go from, 0 to 100 miles an hour quite quickly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of recognizing. And maybe also, I think there's a kind of an important point here, which is to think about where it comes from as well. So kind of the environment you grew up in, acknowledging where did it come from. Not so you can be like, oh, poor me, or it's my dad's fault because he lost it as well. But
No,
it's
no,
about,
no.
but I do think there's something important about decoupling from a repetitive behavior. And so if you know where it comes from, you can then kind of go, well, I understand who I am today, but I can change in the future. Like I want to break this pattern perhaps for my children, or yeah.
Yeah. There, I'm looking. Yeah, I think my dad he's still alive, but his temper is. I don't see any negative sides of it today because he's adult, I'm adult. But I think he had this where it sometimes blew up, and I can see the same in myself. And absolutely, now I've been a dad for more than 20 years. So when I'm reflecting on this, it is 20 years of being a dad where
Right.
no, I mean, back in the early days, I was super stressed out about being a dad, figuring it all out. Where today I'm very, very chill about it. Um, so I don't have huge arguments with my children any longer. The only times I can get annoyed really is if they have a problem in their life, in their personal life, in their feelings, and they don't want help, but they still take the space, or they're claiming a space to own this feeling, but without it's really possible for you as a parent to do anything. And then the feeling of being inadequate, if that's the right word for it,
Yeah.
makes me sad in a way where I just it turns out as being annoyed, and I think that's probably happens often for parents. That if you feel not good enough and not wanted, then you just think that your children are stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about what you were saying then, about how a younger Jasper, say you're in the first like 0 to 5 years being inexperienced. And that's something I was reflecting on today, that it takes time to, like I think we live in a world of like quick hacks, and like, if I read this book, I'll suddenly become enlightened and I'll be able to stop this
Yeah.
patterns of behavior. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that it takes time to become expert at anything, doesn't it? And becoming a parent, you're thrown in at the deep end. There's no manual, and I really do believe your children are here to piss you off. I mean, like they're here to press your buttons, and that is in part their gift to you. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but
Yeah.
they're kind of like little therapists, in part. They
They
really they give.
absolutely hit the weak spots you have and show
Yeah.
you where you need to grow as a person. Absolutely.
So they are the hack. That's, you can save money on a therapist if you just recognize what are the common things they keep pissing you off about, or perhaps, I mean, we're talking about conflict here, but this also goes into what do you struggle with when you're a new parent,
Yeah.
doesn't it? There's so many things. When you were a new parent, what was the biggest thing for you? Was there one thing in particular that you really struggled
Uh,
with?
I remember, oh man, it's many years ago. I think one of the things that first come to mind when I think back at where my children pissed me off was if they um were normal brother and sisters, mean to each other, or they didn't get stuff, they couldn't figure out how to work together or play together. I got so
Yeah.
annoyed, which is
Yeah.
a stupid way of trying to help them.
Well, you
Um,
weren't trying to help them, you're just getting triggered.
yeah,
you know
yeah, that's it.
yeah, you can't help
Uh,
people when you're really triggered.
no, 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 and well, I'm talking about conflict. The biggest hack I have gotten in my life during these 20 years of being a parent is
Hmm.
stop looking at it as a problem. Not about being a parent, but about all the small problems I have seen or things I mean, it could be whatever. When you are being so lucky that you are the parent of a child, you come with a lot of ideas about what is right, what is wrong, how should it be, and all these feelings that are like almost imprinted in you during you have grown up with the parents you have, the society around you, you have the culture you have.
That's right. Yeah.
And sometimes I've been triggered about like kind of the what would the neighbors say?
Absolutely. Yeah. Judgment of others, right? So
Yeah,
what, my children are screaming and it's past bedtime, and what are they going to think?
yeah. And when you remove the but why should this be a problem? Then you can remove the that there even is a conflict. And there's I mean there's it's funny the word conflict because can we look at the challenges we face in the very close partnership it is to live together with a partner, with a wife, husband, whatever you have out there. Um, Sometimes you can just get a little annoyed at each other. Stuff happens in life, and instead of having it as a conflict, how can we then see it as a challenge we need to solve together?
Yeah. What as something that brings us together and creates more connection, perhaps. Is that what you're saying?
I'm more saying that sometimes well, we haven't had any recently, me and my wife, where we've argued about something, but there's some of them when look back, it's like, oh, why didn't you work together to solve this challenge you stood in front of in life instead of fighting about something, arguing and fighting with your words about what is up, what is down, and who is right? Why don't
Yeah.
you go on the side of the team?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point because I do believe that when you're in partnership with somebody, and indeed if you've had children, you are on a team. It's like you're a partnership, you're a business. If you
Yeah.
operate it as a business, conflict resolution in business is really important, isn't it? Because it gets in the way of good performing teams, and that affects happiness, well-being, performance, all of these things.
And I've seen something in my mind mirror, you could call it, when I've been reflecting on where I think I could grow as a person,
Mhm.
which is it's in the same area of the I want to be right. Then for some reason, I've also, and maybe it comes from personal insecurity, but I want to be better. So I measure myself sometimes, not a lot still, but still the evil little ego pops up from time to time, where if we're standing in front of something, a challenge in life, whatever, I want to be better at handling it than my wife. And that
Mm.
is just sad somehow, Martin.
Well, it's competition, isn't it? You
Yeah,
feel
but
like
you
you want to
should
win.
you compete with the person you're living together with? That's kind of weird. You should be on a team.
In an ideal world, yes. There's a
Yeah.
really nice saying.
Have you met that feeling in yourself?
What, no, I'm not really one for competition. But I do have experience of getting angry because I want to be right. I can think of an example, not in my personal relationship, but it was a work-based situation some years ago where I worked in an office and it was a very old house and the floor wasn't level. And as such, my chair wasn't level. And after a while, good year, started to develop back issues. And I started to think about it and just thought, well, no
Yeah.
wonder I'm sitting like this. And so I put all of my energy into being right, fighting the employer rather than it was all their fault, not actually considering what was what gifts were there for me. I wasn't using, I was sitting down for 8 hours a day. I
Yeah.
could have been walking around, etc., etc. And I went on a Tai Chi retreat for a week, and this very wise Tai Chi teacher told him, "Oh, I've got this awful back. I can't do anything." And then I probably started ranting about why I was angry about the employer.
Yeah.
Could be your partner, whatever. And he said, "Martin, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy?" And it was in that moment, it was like a light bulb moment. And he gave me the ability to not need to be right anymore. I was like, yeah, I want to be happy. Okay, what can I change myself? Like I can't change my employer. And I came back from that retreat. I bought a yoga ball. I started moving around. I was on the telephone a lot, started moving around. I started doing core exercises. I got fitter. I
Yeah.
started taking responsibility for things that I could take responsibility for. And I think there's something in that around if we're to operate in partnership, in unison, is thinking about what do we have responsibility for and what can we change
Yeah.
individually.
I think a lot of the dads out there, including ourselves, will from time to time have a conflict with our children, end up yelling, having some anger issues, whatever. What would your recommendation be um, if people meet this in themselves?
Yeah, my first gut feeling is around fallibility. Like I've said this to my children from a very young age. Daddy's not perfect. Um, like I don't get it right all the time. In fact, yeah, yeah, like perhaps through children's eyes, you perceive your parents, maybe not when you're a teenager, but when you're younger, as perfect, or certainly
Ah,
hold
yeah,
them
yeah,
up in high regard, don't you?
yeah,
Um, but I've been quite conscious about explaining that I'm not perfect, and maybe that's my way of getting out of poor, but not getting out of, but explaining, I suppose, explaining poor behavior. Look, I'm sorry I shouted at you. I was feeling really angry because uh, I feel like today I've been of service all day. I haven't been able to do anything for myself. So
yeah.
that's kind of where I've gone. That's how I've explained things to my children. Um,
It
yeah,
triggered something in me, Martin, which is an unhealthy habit. I have seen in myself, and my wife has also have it, and I think loads of parents have it. It is the excuse is, well, as you say, it's really good to admit towards your children that you're not perfect. Absolutely. But I have sometimes heard myself saying, I'm sorry, I got angry. I got angry, and then I mention all the stuff I got angry about. So I'm double blaming my child. First, I
you
was
turn it on
angry and
them.
then shouted,
Yeah,
and then I kind of, and I think it's because we cannot admit towards ourselves, okay, I made a fault. I shouldn't have shouted. I lost my temper. I'm in no right to be the one who thinks just because I'm an adult and can shout louder than you can, that I'm the one in the right. And we know this deep down, but then sometimes the excuse come with and I'm missing the English words as a native Danish speaker here, um, with the need for clarifying why it was okay you shouted,
yeah.
which it wasn't. But I've just heard myself do that from time to time. And for anyone listening out there, if you catch yourself in this, or next time you end up being a poor dad, like all of us
Yeah.
have been shitty dads, see if you are double blaming. First, you shout or you lose your temper, then you say you're sorry, and then you explain why it was okay that you ended up losing your temper. It wasn't okay to lose your temper.
So could you
Absolutely
give
not.
could you give us an example of, let's say, a thing that you lose your temper over and how you could say I'm sorry and then convey it in a way that doesn't give with one hand and take back with another? Is there an example?
That would be super cool if I had one.
Well, let's just say you got pissed off about the state of their room, or in your context, you've done a lot of travel in a
Yeah,
relatively small home, which is a
there's an
van.
interesting thing about. I've been thinking a lot about why people say they're sorry.
Okay.
Who are they saying it for? Um, Most of the time, I say, or when I look back, a lot of the times I've said I'm sorry. It is because I want to have the guilt removed from me.
Yeah.
Uh, because I felt bad about whatever it is I have done. If it's shouting, I feel bad about having shouted and made my kids sad. But how do I show them that I love them? Is it by saying I'm sorry? Because sometimes asking for forgiveness or saying you're sorry is for your own benefit.
Yeah, you're talking to yourself. So I think perhaps
No,
the thing that
you're
comes to,
asking them to forgive you by saying you're
yeah,
sorry, and what you did was wrong, and it won't make it right. You said saying you're sorry, but you try to erase the past by saying you're sorry, and you cannot. So I think what is much more important, of course, you should say, "Hey, what I did was wrong. I'm sad about that happened. I'm sad I did shouted. I shouldn't have done that." But how do you actually mend the broken connection? Because if you end up, it is with your partner or with your children. If you end up losing your temper in a way where you are shouting at each other, or them you there the connection between the
yeah,
hearts is broken. There's one person, and I don't know if it was you, Martin, last summer when we met, that said something funny about why people are shouting when they're standing next to each other. It is because the hearts have been moved away, so far away from each other, that you need to shout for the heart feeling to be heard.
right.
And of
Okay,
course,
not
it's some
me.
hippy-dippy bullshit, but there's something in it I like.
Yeah.
It's like you need to, if you end up shouting, you have moved away from each other's connection in a way where you need to acknowledge, you need to mend it afterwards. So I think that's the best you can do when you have, and it's to figure out how do I then mend it,
Okay, so to lean into the hippy dippy bullshit, which I quite like.
which I
uh,
also do, but I
are,
can't accept it.
yeah, are we could we say that um conflict can arise when we're feeling unconnected and we're looking for an opportunity to deepen our connection, and perhaps not the only way that we know, but reparation, coming together can only come from that kind of shouting at each other's hearts, like I missed you, or like you're spending too much time on this and you're getting angry at this. Let's say it's somebody's work situation, your partner's working a lot. You start attacking the work situation, the work thing. And actually a
Yeah.
clearer way of articulating it would be to say,
Sorry.
I I miss you, rather than attacking the work, like attacking the state of the bedroom, like rather than attacking the state of the child's bedroom,
Yeah.
it's actually saying, well, I don't know how to give this example, but I think it's talking about how it makes you feel. It makes me feel, or it makes it hard for me to think, and I would really like to have a calm environment so that we could spend more time connecting, that kind of thing. But when your room is in this
Yeah.
way, it makes me feel angry towards you. And I know that's my feeling and that's my problem to work through. But something I would really love is, if we could do this together, or if you could try and do
Yeah.
X, Y, Z.
You are touching upon something that hurts a little to look at, which is uh, how is it we have learned that through conflict, if we end up I don't know how to put this. There's also something beautiful in loving another person so much that you know you can have a conflict with them, and
Mm.
it's not a question about not loving. You can be angry at each other and disagree a lot, but the love is still there and it can be mended. That is kind of a, I mean, me and my wife, and maybe it's a decision we took. We have never questioned us as a couple. We have been angry at each other, of course we have,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we have decided when we said yes to each other's in our heart that it's like, okay, this is good. We will make this work, and we love each other, and that's it. Uh, but then we also need to work through when we do not agree about something. But what made me sad to think about was, are we so shitty at saying, hey, I really want to feel deeply connected with you, that we sometimes know that the shortcut to connection is after an argument? That's the whole, I mean, makeup sex and all this people talk about,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what's going on? So why shouldn't we just figure out how to be connected?
Yeah. Yeah. I think to be connected is to be vulnerable, which is to vocalize what you really want for yourself, and viewing the other person as perhaps an object that might fix you if you're feeling wounded yourself. Like, what am I saying? I'm saying if you have wounds that you're perhaps unaware of, patterns of behavior that you're unaware of, then it's inevitable that you're going to find yourself repeating the same kind of conflicts,
Yeah.
until you explore kind of where that came from for you. I mean, I am a big advocate of understanding your past, because it definitely influences who you are and the patterns of behavior you get into now. Um, have you ever, or I don't know, have you ever had any therapy, or is living with a therapist enough?
Beside living together with a psychologist for
Yeah,
20 plus years, yes, I have earlier in my life had a little, but not where I went into those part of my past. Um, and when I look back, I had a very traditional upbringing, and from a period where the dads didn't talk a lot about feelings.
no, no,
And it's not to, I'm on absolutely not on a let's blame our parents, but as you say, understand our past. Um, it is not a thing I, I mean, the dialogue I have with you now is feeling wise deeper than a dialogue I've had with my dad.
yeah,
Um, and I hope with our project, with the Better Dad Institute and with these talks, that we can help normalize that we men can share and talk, and also be open about, hey, I'm shitty at this and I'm shitty at that, and I would love to be better at this, and I see
yeah,
negative sides of myself here I would like to work with. So when you say looking at the past, that's what I'm thinking. It was like, there was not a tradition in my family structure
yeah,
for deep talks with my dad in that area. I talked a lot about feelings with my mom, uh,
right,
but not my dad. And I do believe that it would be healthy for dads to talk with their sons about feelings
yeah.
and conflicts.
It does. I mean, perhaps I'm just. Well, I was going to speak to the fact that when you've got lots of children, we've both got four children, but actually, it's not about the number of children. I was going to say that making time to spending time with just one child, I think, is a really important thing to do, to try and carve out these little moments for connection, because I feel as though in the family unit you've all got your parts to play. I noticed that the family dynamic shifts. Let's say when my eldest isn't in the house, it means that the next one
Yeah.
along steps almost into that realm, and and so we're all kind of acting in our parts in the family, but kind of creating some space where we can connect with our individual children, I think is really important. I don't know if you've how have you navigated that over the years, spending time just with one child, or have you found that hard? Because I definitely found that
Um,
hard.
we have a tradition of going on weekly walks. Now they are just whatever weekday works, but we had weekly Wednesday walks
Okay.
because it's an alliteration and that is fun.
Yeah.
So, so wonderful weekly Wednesday walks even goes, and we can probably take more W's there. Um, but those do it for me because when you are walking 10 kilometers together as a
Mm,
family, you intermingle during the time you're walking. It's like often it's a 4 hour walk. Then you walk together with your spouse at some point, then one of the children, then another,
mm,
um, and as we have 4 children, but one is a grown up, so often we are only five when we walk, and that is not the big mix because then sometimes one is walking alone.
mm,
And so it actually is really good if we have a friend walking with us, so we can
mm.
do that. But then I've seen that besides individual time, then one of the things that have repaired and given big connections for me with my each of my children is to have something we do together, um, which
Oh, you've
is
told me about this before. I like this. So
yeah, and
give me an
it
example or two.
is to have something we do together, which is important to do together. It can be with one of my sons, we had a game we played called Little King Story, but then you have something to chat about, and you have something that is not how are you, am I. You can call it to have something external in common with each of your children, and and now when I'm mentioning it out loud, I'm like, ooh, I can see that we've grown out of some of it here with one of the children. Oh, maybe I actually should
Yeah.
take that up again and do
That's so,
more.
yeah, so I'm listening to you thinking, oh yeah, I had a tradition of playing this particular card game with the children, and we do that every evening. That was really nice because we'd put some music on, have some
Yeah,
laughs and talk, and then fallen out the habit of it. And it's I was just thinking then about the importance of working at something, like exercise, like having positive habits. And
yeah,
just hearing you say that, just thinking, oh, we haven't played that game. And then maybe that game was a chapter, but it's like looking for opportunities to have both people
yeah.
having a good time. Like I don't know, I I don't know if I applaud parents that play games with their children for hours that they hate,
No, no,
or or not.
no.
I don't really. I've never been like that.
That's where it should be. You shouldn't do it for your child. You shouldn't do
Yeah,
it for yourself. You should do it because it's something you do together. And there it can sometimes the trap is easy, like, oh my God, if you have a child playing Fortnite, then you start playing Fortnite with the child. That is not an external thing you're doing together. Then you're going into the, can you say, lane of or the direction that is
yeah,
already in place. It needs where I've seen most results with it is when you choose a thing that you do together and
yeah.
not where you go into a field of interest that is already there in the child or in you, because then one of you can lose interest.
So let's say I find this new board game or this musical instrument or
Yeah,
video game or whatever, and we come to it, and my child isn't interested. uh, if I was feeling like, well, F you then. Like I was feeling insecure about my relationship with my
Yeah.
child, or like, well, I've tried and it doesn't work. It's not a one shot deal, is it? It's not like you try one thing and if it doesn't work, it's
No, no, you keep on. And I know, and that's personal insecurity again. I have had so much fun drawing drawings together with my youngest daughter, but now she's
yeah.
so good, Martin.
I've got a twist on that though. I
I
used to
don't
do
want to. I don't
drawing.
want to draw together with her anymore because I feel inadequate. I'm just like, oh, my shit is looks shitty. I mean, I was better than her once, you know.
Yeah, okay, so you've got the competitive gene. Yeah, I would do a drawing game where I would uh let's say there's three of us and I would say, right, everybody's got to draw this and I would describe this and you'd get a minute or two. You'd
Yeah.
be under pressure. So it'd be an elephant riding a bicycle backwards with a television on its head. Go.
Yes. Cool.
Yeah,
But
so
it is very clear for me when I look at conflicts, and I also think that's why we are talking about this in a dialogue that is about conflicts. And that is when I look back over the more than 20 years of parenting I've had in my life, the periods where I have had a strong connection, where I had rhythms of having fun together with one of my
mm,
children or each of them on their own about something, then we had a connection there. Then the overall connection was not as easy to break.
yeah.
Where if there isn't this, if it just becomes a parent-child relationship and you don't have something that is really cool and fun to do together, then I can see the connection break easier. And it's in both ways. It can be them thinking I'm a stupid dad, and it can be me thinking they are an annoying brat or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the biggest hacks in conflict resolution is see what you can do upfront to have a strong connection. Have
And
something
I,
together, because why should you
that's
fight with one you
yeah,
love?
that's going to be fun for both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. So there's got to be something about, well, either it's a podcast or a list, yeah, a blog post on our website, all about fun things you can do, right?
We should do that, but let's not make too
Yeah.
many promises. Now we started the podcast, and
Oh goodness. Okay.
let's start with this.
Let's just keep this hush hush then. No one heard that.
No.
Yeah, but I think as a sort of final thought on the topic of conflict, where I've got to in this discussion is this, perversely, do we kind of invite conflict when we're feeling less connected? I don't know if I'm clear yes or no on that, but it kind of doesn't matter. What I'm left with is this feeling of like actually connection, connection, spending time thinking about the other person and yourself, and that being the glue that means when you do have conflict, and we haven't said it, I think conflict is okay,
Yeah.
but when you do have conflict, that it doesn't shatter everything. It's this kind of
And
flexible glue.
yeah, and there is with the podcast I have with my wife called Self-Directed, with if anybody wants to listen to that also. We interviewed a woman called Summer Jean, and she said something that has just stuck with me, and I'm still working on how can I implement it better in my life. She said, force and connection cannot coexist. So you cannot force people to something and at the same point demand that they have a strong, loving connection to you. Force and connection do not coexist. You need a connection, and the connection needs to be strong. And if you are connected, I would do things for you because I love you. I would help you with things because I love you. If you ask me of something, I know you are a reasonable human being, but it needs to come from the connection. So with the conflict resolution we are talking about, I also got triggered actually, Martin, about do I sometimes seek conflicts because I am disconnected already and I want to be connected? That is
Hmm.
an interesting one to go and ponder on. I'm not sure I want to hear the answer because it's maybe a yes, but
Well,
that's where
that's
we
the
can
work,
grow.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
this
work.
is the horrible thing. You
Yeah,
called this in, remember?
yeah. No, but it is really interesting to ask yourself, where is the glue that binds me together? Where is it I have something third in common with my wife or my children, where we do stuff together to do them together and not because we are married or I'm your dad. Where is it we
Hmm.
do stuff that strengthens our connection? And
Yeah.
you're right. We
And
should write a blog post about it and share our thoughts more in depth about how people can work with this.
yeah, and I think there is something as well about the importance, we haven't said this, the importance of when you're a parent and you're really in the trenches, you're really in it, especially when your children are younger, is to try and find a tiny bit of fresh air, not literally, but like clean air where you've got a little bit of time to pause and reflect. Maybe that's doing a fun thing or looking after your body or your mind in some way, because it's really easy to not notice how the incremental effect of feeling frustrated, or
Yeah,
you're not as connected as you were with your partner because this new baby's here, and and it can cause conflict ultimately.
yeah.
Yeah.
And as this is the podcast for the Better Dad Institute, then what I would say with that is, I find it really wild that you can take 10 years of education where the goal is that you should learn how to work and do a job. But where's the education we have to become fathers? Where's the tradition of sharing that give us the knowledge
Yeah.
to do such an important task it is to bring up a child in the world? And
Yeah.
I
we
mean,
yeah
to become a lawyer, it's whatever number of years in university, but
yeah
but dads, yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that is the reason for starting the Better Dad Institute. And I want to invite anyone listening who wants to sit around the fire, as I believe we used to sit around the fire
Yeah,
as men and talk, or we'd be out and about doing our thing, fighting with the woolly mammoths, and
yeah,
also allowing other men to be around our children. Allowing seems like the wrong way of putting it, but just living in more in community. I think we're
yeah,
quite we can feel quite cut off. So that again is a motivation for doing this. So join one of our circles and listen into our next
absolutely.
conversation.
And me and Martin will continue looking at ourselves, with looking at our feelings, talking about all these difficult things it is to be a dad. Today's subject was conflict, where we ended up figuring out or exploring that one of the best ways to avoid conflict is to make sure we have a very, very strong connection and work on that. But we are open to getting subjects that you would love us to explore together. And we will meet once a month and take a deep talk about these subjects we have that is important to share. And Martin, I'm very happy that you are, as always, open and loving and caring and explorative when we talk together, and that we have this safe space where we even
Yeah,
invite listeners into listening to us being insecure about all the things we are doing.
likewise, I love it. It's important stuff, and I look forward to us reflecting when we next speak about how we got on with our homework, which has come off the back of this discussion.
We should. Okay, Martin, thanks a lot. And for the listeners out there, send an email at heythebetterdadinstitute.com if you want to send a subject or if you want to hear more. And Otherwise, a new podcast will come out in the future. So thanks a
Enjoy.
lot.
Yeah. Thanks, Jasper. Take care, everyone. Bye.